The story begins with a woman draped in white praying in her home, unaware that a ghost in black clothing and white hair appears in the mirror behind her. Just as Aning kneels down to kowtow, the white-haired ghost slowly emerges from the mirror and crawls behind her. Aning seems to sense something but turns around and sees nothing. Thinking she's hallucinating, she quickly removes her white robe and puts it in the closet. She crawls under the covers and prepares to sleep, but then a terrifying sound reaches her ears. Her daughter, who lives next door, hears the screams and rushes to her mother's room, only to find her dead in her bedroom, as if she'd been torn apart and skinned by a wild beast. Aning was targeted by the white-haired ghost because 3 days prior she had entered a room she wasn't supposed to. Aning was a hotel waitress, and from her first day, her boss had told her not to go in, no matter what happened on the 3rd floor. Although Aning readily agreed, she couldn't resist the constant sound of a woman crying from the 3rd floor, and her curiosity finally gave in. Upon reaching the 3rd floor entrance, Aning found it locked. But just as she turned to leave, it opened automatically and the wailing rang out even louder. Determined to uncover who was weeping on the 3rd floor, Aning turned on the lights and headed down the hallway. Unexpectedly, as she took a step, the light bulb next to her began to spark. This eerie sight filled her with both fear and excitement, and only intensified her curiosity about the 3rd floor's secrets. Soon, she reached the end of the hallway and bravely opened the innermost door, discovering a mysterious woman in white sitting alone at her dressing table. At this point, Aning had no idea that these 4 short words would be a death warrant from a female ghost. Sure enough, 3 days later, in the middle of the night, she took Aning's life. From then on, rumors of a haunted hotel circulated and business plummeted. The owner, despairing, asked her 2 granddaughters to help run the hotel. She didn't expect the hotel to return to its former glory, but only hoped her granddaughters, Alena and Ah Fei, would agree to one condition.
Yeah.
The owner didn't explain the 3rd floor's haunting to them, falsely claiming it was under renovation and unnecessary. The next day, Alena ran into her ex-boyfriend, Ado, a police officer investigating Aning's mysterious death, and had already traced his investigation to her family's hotel. It was Alena's first discovery that the deceased Aning was an employee of the hotel. To restore the hotel's reputation, she brought Ado to the hotel and allowed her to investigate the case before leaving. But that night, while relaxing on the hotel balcony, Alena noticed a light coming on in a room on the 3rd floor. This made her wonder who was hiding there. When she reached the 3rd floor, she heard the same pitiful cries, but the door, which had previously opened automatically, was now locked. But this didn't bother Alena. She simply grabbed a hammer and forced the door open, leading to a bedroom further down the hallway. She opened the door to find the white-haired ghost, like her boss, sitting at the dressing table. Believing her to be a hotel guest, Alena simply nodded in apology and left. Little did she know that she only had 3 days left to live, and from then on, she encountered a series of strange things. First, a call from room 13 called the front desk saying they needed a new towel. Alena personally delivered the towel. Strangely, despite the sounds of a shower running in the bathroom, no one answered. This puzzled Alena, and just as she was about to leave, a familiar cry echoed from the bathroom. Alena suspected it might be a guest from the 3rd floor, but when she pushed open the bathroom door, she was surprised to find it completely empty. Just then, the phone rang in the room.
Halo?
Kalau aku tidak ada di kamar mandi, lalu aku ada di mana? Biarkan aku bermain, stres karena aku terganggu.
Alena, captivated by the sound of the ring, quickly hung up and called the front desk. She learned that no one was staying in room 13. Clearly, the white-clad ghost had taken possession of Alena. Could she escape her 3-day death curse? A woman accidentally stumbled into the white-haired ghost's room and was met with a series of vengeance. First, she was lured to an unoccupied guest room, then witnessed the white-haired ghost pounce upon her from under the blankets. Seeing Alena, frightened, hiding in the doorway, the ghost then smashed the double-panel window at her. Fortunately, Alena's quick reaction allowed her to escape, narrowly avoiding harm. The white-haired ghost's death threats nearly frightened Alena to death. However, her ex-boyfriend Ado didn't believe in ghosts. He flung the door open, only to find everything inside had returned to normal. everything Alena had just experienced seemed like a hallucination. Meanwhile, her younger sister Ah Fei experienced a similarly bizarre incident. While she was packing up in the classroom, a mannequin beside her suddenly came to life, grabbed a pair of scissors from the table, and stabbed her. Though frightened and screaming, Ah Fei managed to escape, but her screams had already attracted the teacher and a group of classmates. However, upon entering the classroom, they found the mannequin, as usual, showing no signs of life. After a series of bizarre incidents, the two girls finally confessed to their grandmother that they had sneaked onto the third floor and witnessed the white-haired ghost. Knowing that both granddaughters were in danger, their grandmother finally revealed a secret she had kept hidden for years.
Perempuan yang ada di kamar tak bernomor. Dia bukan manusia.
She explained that she had inherited the hotel from her deceased son years ago and planned to renovate it from the inside out. A worker installing a light on the third floor heard sobbing and gasping from a room inside. Curious, he opened the door and, like Alena and her sister, saw the white-haired ghost. For the next 3 days, the workers encountered a series of bizarre incidents. On the third night, they discovered the worker banging his head against the wall. After leaving a strange message, he instantly killed himself. This eerie scene terrified Grandma, who immediately sought help from a renowned local shaman. The shaman simply stood at the doorway, extended his hand, and after a brief moment of sensing, he was horrified and declared himself no match for the ghost. The only thing she could guarantee was that she would be safe if she didn't enter the room to disturb the ghost. To ensure the smooth operation of the hotel, Grandma decided to suppress the news of the haunting and securely locked the third-floor door. However, she never anticipated that not only would an employee trespass on the third floor, but even her 2 granddaughters would become the ghost's prey. To escape the 3-day death curse, Alena and her ex-boyfriend Otto sought the same shaman from the past for a solution. The shaman stated that without knowing the true identity of the white-haired ghost, there was nothing she could do. With only 3 days left for Alena to live, how easy would it be to discover the ghost's name? After much deliberation, she made a bold decision: to visit the third-floor ghost's room again. There must be clues to the ghost's identity there. However, when she reached the white-haired ghost's door, Otto and his sister, Ah Fei, learned of Alena's plan. While they felt it was too risky, they realized it might be the only solution. Strangely this time, when the sisters entered the room, they didn't see the white-haired ghost. A moment later, Alena found a scrap of paper under the bed, only then realizing her sister was missing. As she searched for Ah Fei, she found her sister standing in front of the doorframe, banging her head against the wall. Seeing her sister in this state, Alena couldn't help but think of the worker who had died by colliding with the wall, so she rushed forward to stop her. Unexpectedly, Ah Fei was possessed by the white-haired ghost. She slowly peeled back her hair, revealing a bloody spectral face at the back of her head. Then, under the ghost's control, Ah Fei attempted to strangle Ah Fei. Fortunately, Hodor, who was outside, heard the noise and rushed in to help. With her help, the white-haired ghost finally left Ah Fei's body and stood before the 3 of them, repeating her eerie and terrifying words. Terrified, the 3 hurried away. The next morning, while preparing the rooms, the maid discovered a piece of paper hidden under each bed. When they pieced them together, they discovered a love letter. So who was this love letter addressed to? And what does it have to do with the white-haired ghost's grudge? After learning the ghost's name, Master Shu Mo confidently approached the haunted house, sat cross-legged, and began a ritual, intending to send the white-haired ghost away on the spot. However, she tragically discovered that she was still no match for the ghost. Without even showing her face, she had already beaten the shaman, sending him fleeing in panic and tumbling down the stairs. A moment later, Alena and Hodor saw in the mirror that the white-haired ghost was about to strangle the shaman. With a final effort, the shaman reminded them that only by placing the wedding ring left by Alena's father on the ghost's body could her grudge be appeased. Then, the white-haired ghost twisted her neck. It turned out that not long ago, Alena and the others had pieced together a letter that revealed it was actually a love letter from the white-haired ghost to her father. To uncover the truth, Alena and Hodor followed the address in the letter to the village where the white-haired ghost was born. Upon learning of their purpose, the village chief reassured them that no one with a white hair had ever lived there. However, Hodor, a police officer, had already sensed she was concealing the truth. That night, Alena and Hodor sneaked into the chief's home, secretly searching for clues about the white-haired ghost.
Arno, ada.
Ada apa?
They never expected to find a portrait of the white-haired ghost in the chief's home. Just then, the chief's wife suddenly entered and revealed that the girl in the portrait was her daughter, Menor. Menor was born with a blood-white disease, and since childhood, she had been considered a monster. Instead of seeking justice for her daughter, the village chief, like the other villagers, treated her as an ominous sign, often beating her without reason. Unable to endure this pain, Menor decided to flee the village. When she collapsed in the woods, exhausted from exhaustion, she was rescued by a kind-hearted passerby, Alena's father, Bascara. Far from looking at Menor with disdain, he took her to his hotel and offered her free accommodation. It wasn't long before Bascara fell in love with this pure-hearted girl, and they secretly became engaged. One day, Bascara was about to go out on business, and Menor, who stayed at home, wrote a heartfelt love letter, tore it into pieces, and secretly hid them in various rooms of the hotel.
Kalau kau pulang nanti, kau harus ikuti permainanku.
Menor was puzzled by the fact that Bascara hadn't returned for nearly a year. Worried about her fiancé's safety, he decided to go look for her himself. But when he met Bascara again, she was already married to another woman and had a child. Devastated, Menor blamed his illness for everything, and in anger, he flayed his skin with a knife at his dressing table, dying 3 days later. Unbeknownst to Menor, Bascara had gone out to buy an engagement ring, but upon exiting the store, he was hit by a car and lost his memory. The elderly couple who struck him adopted him as their son and helped him marry a beautiful woman. But one day, Bascara's memory suddenly returned, revealing that the person he loved most was Menor, who had long since become a skeleton. Although Bascara had buried his beloved, his resentment lingered forever in that bedroom. Upon learning what had happened, Alena sought help from a shaman, but the shaman's overconfidence led to his own tragic death. Fortunately, he not only found the engagement ring among his father's belongings, but also learned that Menor's body was buried in the tunnel beneath the hotel. He and Hodor journeyed underground, unaware that Menor's ghost had also followed them, right behind Hodor. A short while later, Hodor claimed to have found Menor's burial site, but when Alena approached, she discovered he had been possessed by Menor. Alena struggled to push Hodor away, but while fleeing, he accidentally fell into a pit where Menor was truly buried. Although Hodor had already caught up and strangled him with the tool, Alena persevered and successfully placed the ring on Menor's remains. Instantly, Menor learned the truth. Feeling the love of Bascara, all his resentment dissipated, and even his soul vanished in a wisp of white light. From then on, no one in this hotel would be cursed by the evil spirit again,